land, but I remember once a whispering in my ears. Everything you do from your heart will surely echo here. So I dance and sing that tune. Pour my water on the ground and watch as roses bloom. Did you put more love in the world today? More love on your way to the setting sun. There is only one measure when you can honestly say, I put more love.
Oh, there I am.
remember when we had to leave our home.
Hi, guys. How are you? Good. Okay, we're going to do something a little different tonight. Tonight kind of marks the beginning. Is this thing on? Okay. Now can you hear me? No. Hello? Oh. It's all good. Monty loves his buttons. Okay, anyway, so tonight kind of marks the start of a really fun week for us. This is the beginning of our 5-year anniversary week, which is kind of a big deal for several reasons. One, in current, you guys can come on up and sit. A lot of like modern day church starts, it's kind of a big deal to make it past 5 years. We have a lot of churches that get started that don't, especially as new church plants. And so we felt like we really wanted to celebrate this year. Usually we kind of, we do a birthday party, we do a barbecue, that kind of thing. But tonight, instead of preaching, Holly and I went to breakfast today and kind of got all up in our feels about different things. And I thought it would be fun because I don't think many of you know all of this. And you get to hear stuff from me a lot, but you don't always get to hear things from everybody else up here. The four of us, oh, you big dork. The four of us kind of represent where TCG started. And it all started one day where we remembered to take a picture. And we decided to go to Steak and Shake. This was years ago. And we went to Steak and Shake because we were really angry. And if you know me, when I'm sad or when I'm angry or when I'm happy, I like to celebrate with food. And so chocolate is better and fried is great. So Steak and Shake was perfect that night. But we were just really struggling with a lot of different things. And we found ourselves this night asking the question, what if? And I just thought it would be neat tonight to share that story with you and kind of some of the perspectives and the heart that went into TCG tonight, because we're going to do a lot of celebrating next week and it'll be a lot more formal, but I thought this could just kind of be a nice organic way to share a little bit with you about why we felt called to do what we did, and how it changed over the course of the last 5 years. So do you guys have microphones? Okay, cool. I think you guys are sharing.
Hello.
Yes, okay.
I did it because she told me to.
Jeff? No, that was before I stressed him out too much, I think.
That's before all you came into my life.
I think we were both significantly less gray in that picture. So, okay, so I want to start by maybe go back a little bit, even before this conversation, because we, as the four of us, we're kind of doing life together in a lot of ways. And let's just talk a little bit about kind of some of the frustration and the angst that each of you felt when it came to church culture, your own experiences, and some of that kind of previous to crazy dreaming. You want to start?
You were looking at me, so I knew you were going to say that. Oops. All the water bottles over here. That's a loaded question, Christy. I think, so for those of you who don't know, the three of us, and then the match made me and Scott, have done life together for 11 years now. And so a lot of our church journey, we were able to journey together over the last 11 years. So we both had starts within that, but we also got to be in a lot of spaces together and share a lot of just places of grief and places of feeling very called, I guess, or a desire to be part of church culture. I think some of my experience came from both being in spaces where we were walking through periods of grief, or we were walking through periods of just struggle in our life, and just not seeing the church show up. I think that was a huge place of just, this is so many of the church experiences that we were part of, marketed belonging and marketed family and marketed community, and then when it really mattered, they weren't there. And I think that was a really big heart that we all had, was like, this isn't supposed to be that place of belonging that we're craving. And I think being in some leadership places and oftentimes being dismissed because of my past, dismissed because of being a female, watching you walk that road. There was a lot of those places, I think, of just grief. And I think there was early phases of deconstruction, but we didn't know that then. Like, it was just like recognizing like worship culture and service culture and things that we were seeing in churches that we just weren't okay with. And I think at the bottom line, we wanted to see, I think the things that made us angry was a lot of places where service was a whole lot more important than outreach and loving people. And so we were really just like surrounding this idea of like, why isn't there more out there that focuses on loving and a lot less on the entertainment value of that? So
Yeah.
I think for me, my walk with the Lord has been different. You know, I grew up Episcopalian, and then I walked away from God for a long time. And then I met my wife, and as I told her, she was a Bible thumper, and I had no intention on going to church with her or anything like that, 17 years ago. But for me, so much of the frustration is as I become to fall in love with the Lord, and that was in a Baptist church, and even though there was a lot of good things, that's where I first started seeing the mistreatment of people in your church. And it finally got to the point when we decided to leave there, and we left there for another church, and it was awesome because now they would let my wife teach. She wasn't a pastor, she couldn't preach. But it was just so heartbreaking and discouraging through those years, and to watch how they treated my wife, right? Because they didn't treat me that way. Nobody ever treated me bad. They treated my wife bad, and to watch that and to watch the hurt and to deal with that hurt was just so incredibly painful to watch her go through that. And then we left that church and we go to another church, and then they pretty much kind of just dismissed her. The talents that she brought to the table, she's already preached and she's already ran an international women's ministry, but then you get there and they're just like, well, we just don't really want anything to do with that. We're progressive and we want to rule the world. We're going to tell everybody we're the best thing in the world, but only if it's done the way me as the pastor and nobody else here cares. I am the one who's going to tell you how the world's going to be run, and I'm going to do it, and you're going to deal with it. And so that was just heartbreaking for me to walk through all those stages. And we had been to a couple churches in a couple different places, and you get going and everybody loves it, but then everybody wants to slam on the brakes because they're like, you're too much. That's really what it felt like. It's like, you're just too much. You guys want to go from 0 to 100 miles an hour, and you want to do it right now, and you want to do this and this and this, and they're like, we're not ready for that. And it's like, but that's why you're still sitting in the same pews, you're still saying the same prayers, and you're still doing the same crap that your ancestors were doing, because it's taken you 100 years to change from wooden pews to putting a pad on the pews. So that's where, things need to change. And I'm sorry if we're going too fast, but either get out of the way or thing. Yeah. So I think we've tried to make up for a lot of it in the last 5 years.
So my deconstruction phase probably happened even a couple years before this, and they don't even know this, where I grew up Southern Baptist, so I was on the clear other spectrum of things that I am now. But always wrestled with, like, more specifically, like, women in ministry. Like, there's no difference in the verbiage. Like, you're parsing words, like, it drove me crazy. And I'll never forget, it was probably not too around this time when I was on staff at a church, and as the youth pastor, then the, if you want to call it media person, whatever you want to call that, I don't know what that was. I got called into the pastor's office, and it was after, because then at that point, Christy was on staff, and it was after she had a conversation with them, and I got called in that same day, and said, "What's your perspective on this?" And I told my perspective, and he looked at me and said, "And we're done with you." And I said, "And likewise," and was trying to leave respectfully, and they made that hard. At that point, I struggled. I was struggling a lot. For those of you who know me, I don't do change well at all. I go through it in my own very special way. And
The last 5 years have had a lot of special ways for Scott.
Curled up in the ball on the floor.
do what?
Curled up in the ball on the floor.
That's what I was going to say. Sitting in the corner, rocking back and forth. And so
I'll have like an idea and I'll call Holly and I'm like, what level of freak out is Scott? And it's like ball on the floor, laying on the couch.
But yeah, like I was like, we've got to do something different. Even before that conversation, I felt like it was months. We were in a debate and at this church that we were at, leadership meetings of going back and forth of the simple thing of paying a babysitter to come to a small group to watch the kids so the adults can interact. They were coming up with all these other solutions that weren't helpful, that weren't life-giving, that weren't pouring into people. And we're like, just pay them the frickin' money. Like, pay the high schooler the money to watch the kids. I'm so frickin' tired of these conversations. Like, let's pour into people. Let's be able to have some conversations. Like, I'm done with this. Like, and so yeah, at that point and obviously if I don't like change, at that point I have been like, okay, we're done. I'm done.
Yeah, that was a big deal. So talk to me a little bit about how you have seen God move on this journey. I think the four of us have kind of had a front row seat for a lot of crazy things that a lot of people don't even know about, and like answered prayers and crazy God movement in seasons of the last 5 years. Is there one that maybe stands out to you? I'll tell one while I give you guys a minute to think about it. Some of you guys might not know this story. This was a crazy God thing. When we were told to leave Commercial Street, it was one of those things where they said, you've got two options: change what you're doing or change where you're doing it. And I was like, deuces, we're out. Like, this is what we're called to do. You're not going to change who we are. And I truly believe that something else will come along. And within a week, so go back just a little bit, because this is like, sometimes I think we just need to be remembered that God's working ahead of us before we even recognize it. So during COVID, we're, feeding on the streets and the sidewalks at commercial streets. Some of you were there and were part of that. There was
Dave had to take his and go.
That was only once or twice. But anyway, there was an individual, and they would come and eat dinner. And repetitively, for like a month, they came to me and said, I own a building, and I think you need to buy it. And I was like, well, I don't have any money to buy a building. And then they would say it again the next night. I have this building. I really think you need to buy it. And I was like, I don't think we need a building. But to like be nice, right? I'm like, well, why don't you give me the address and we'll drive by and look at this building. And so that night, after we served dinner, I go over to Scott and Holly's and I was like, hey, let's pile the kids all in the car. Let's squish into a van. We're going to go look at this building that this person keeps talking to me about. I mean, this was like weeks. You need to buy this building. You need to buy this building. And first of all, like, there's been a lot of people over the years that are like, I'm going to give you this or this. And I'm like, I don't even know if they own this building. So we'll find out. But anyway, so we drive over and it's over on the west side of town. And I'm like, why would we want a building way over here on the west side of town? We're on Commercial Street, right? And so it was just like, thank you, but no thank you. And then 3 weeks later, I'm calling this person saying, do you really own this building? How much do you want for this building? Because we now don't have a building. But when we met with Phil Snyder here from Brentwood, and he said, I really think you guys need to consider being part of the disciples. We have a church that you could use, and it's out on West Chestnut, all the way out on the west side of town. I drive to that church, and that church is a mile from the building, which is now the OC. And so once we knew that the church was out there, it was like, okay, clearly this building was supposed to be ours. And so when we called and we asked, they gave us a price, and I'm like, yeah, we don't have that. And so we put out this crazy call to raise $300,000 in 30 days. Like, that was crazy. And so we started just praying and like talking to people, and money started coming in. But like the first priority in that time was to renovate Family Connection, because at that time during COVID, there were no places in the city of Springfield doing supervised visits. And so we knew that had to be the first thing that reopened. And so we set a closing date on the outreach center with $25 in our checking account. And sometimes faith looks like it doesn't make any sense. And sometimes faith is completely counterintuitive. And sometimes faith is a lot like what Dr. King said when he said, sometimes you take the first step without seeing the whole staircase. $25 was definitely one step of a very large staircase. And so we just put it out there. We came.
And for a guy who doesn't do change wells, that was not
terrifying to you. Yeah, you didn't like that. So we get 10 days before closing. And I remember Sharita, myself, like we were all like, okay, this is going to be fine. This is going to come through. And Lynn and I went on a drive, and a couple of other, were you with us? I can't remember. I think it was just Lynn and I. Yes. And so Lynn had a vial of peppermint oil in the car, and Lynn was like, I'm going to anoint this building. Well, on Commercial Street, Lynn had done that with 2 other buildings, and we actually ended up getting them, which was like funny. So it became this running joke. So anyway, we go over, and Lynn literally like threw the whole bottle and like. So it was a lot of peppermint oil, and it smelled beautiful. And so it was one of those things. Well, as we were driving away, there was a rainbow in the sky, and Lynn was like, see, Mom, like, I think that this is going to happen. And I'm like, okay, like we're getting really close. And we'd put a clause in there that we could pull out up to 48 hours before closing. And so we got a phone call the very next day from our real estate agent that an angel donor had anonymously made a gift for the entire purchase price of the outreach center. And we were able to close on time, and we paid with cash. that they had donated. And like, that was such a God thing to me. And it was just this reminder of like, don't ever one, put God on a timeline, because he'll come, like God comes through in ways we don't expect, when we don't expect. But also, it has constantly challenged me to look for those things ahead of time now, so that when people are like, hey, I have this idea, or I have this thought, and I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And I remember that I've got this building you need to buy, because it didn't make any sense at the time, but it sure worked out perfectly.
Oh yeah, it was crazy, because none of that was in play. The other church down on Chestnut, the day we rolled out of Commercial Street, that is why we owned the yellow box truck, and that is why we own the white handicap van, because we figured we were going to have to do church in a park, and the box truck is where we were going to serve our stuff out of, and we didn't intend on having any kind of building. And believe me, the church and the Family Connection building weren't much of buildings when we received them. Mm-mm. But anyways, I just say that's the kind of fit, we just rolled out. We knew that we weren't done, but we didn't know where we were going to end up. It was a crazy time.
We were pretty crazy.
Orange shag carpet on the walls and the inside of the OC. It was rough.
It was rough. It was rough. How about you guys? What's something that you've learned? How did God surprise you on this journey?
I think for me, like looking at that picture I think that we went into this with probably some of the least likely people to set out to do something like this when it comes to what is normal for a lot of church plans. And part of that was like, we didn't come in with an enormous amount of certified training or high college degrees in education. We didn't come into this with large bank accounts personally so we could invest our own. In fact, we've come into this very, 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 very small incomes. But man, we were passionate and we were crazy, and I think sometimes a little bit stupid, but there was so much, I think.
God can sanctify stupid.
Exactly, like naive, like I don't the right word, but like I look at us in those pictures, and like part of the heart of TCG started with the fact that the four of us loved each other so much then, and we're willing to be like, I'm in if you're in, like we're gonna do this together. And from day one, we were just like, everything would just like fall into place, and things were crazy. Like I remember tearing down C Street building, and literally like there's a photo of me like asleep on my living room floor because we were so tired. We'd work so hard. I didn't know how to demo anything, but like Bob's like, here, also here's a helmet because I don't trust you with this jackhammer, but it'll be fine. So we learned a lot about demoing and reconstruction. We've done that a lot now. But I think the core of that, and then as people would come into our world, even the people that have moved on, there was always just this core relational heart to be like, we're going to do this together, and we're going to love each other, and we're going to show up together. And I think even though we didn't always have the know-how, we were not afraid to say yes, even though we were like, I don't know how, but we'll do it. So it was like, hey, our cold weather shelter needs a place for people to hang out between 4 to 8. And Christy's like, comes to us, and we're like, we have to do that, right? Like, these are people's lives. We have to do that. Family Connection, we were getting started with that. And Children's Division was like, okay, we trust you. Like, you're doing great. And then it was like, oh, but we need you to do more. Okay, we have to do that. We have to figure out a way how to expand that. And it's just been this consistent growth. But the beautiful thing is, I think where we've seen God the most is it's never been about the numbers. It's never been how many people can we feed? How many people will show up in our building? How many people are we going to be able to get in shelter that night? It's about this person and their story, and this person and their story, and this person and their story. And so I think the way that I have seen consistently is that like the way God has moved is sitting in this room today, like sitting in our staff meeting. Like over half of our staff now is people who have come from insane places that we've loved on through outreach, who have now changed so much and invited us in to do life with them. And I'm so proud of every single one of you. And from Family Connection, from Street Outreach, from the Outreach Center, from every place we've been invited into, it has been invited in just to love people and to hear their stories and to know, and like the advocacy followed. And the bringing change has all followed to that. And so I can like say that like what started as the 4 of us is like hundreds of people that we love deeply and that we'll be there for in a heartbeat, and that they will show up for us in a heartbeat. And I think that's where I am just really proud of this community, and I'm really proud of the way those relationships have continued to change us.
I agree. I think, though, something, and I know you guys have all heard us say it, but when we sat at that table that night and we started making plans, one of our first conversations that we had,
I don't
because
even think we made plans that
well,
night.
we were talking about it, but we sat on our porch at the swing and really started planning things. We didn't even know. Yeah, it was a mess. But anyways, our first conversations was that when we did this, we had to do it as a family, right? We had to start that family motto from the time that we were small, right? Because when you get big, you can't add that back in. It's impossible to add that back in. And so that was one of the very first conversations that we had, is if we're going to do this, we have to do it in a manner that we are family. You know, we invite people into our lives, into our homes. And so we're, you know, and so I think that's made a huge difference in how we don't have great, huge numbers. You know, we don't have 5,000 people sitting in our church. You know, it just doesn't happen that way, but that's okay, because the people that sit here now are our family. So I think that helped so much over the years. So.
I look back over the last, because when was that? 11 years ago? 12 years ago?
Not that. That was
No.
that was probably 7 years ago.
7 years ago.
Yeah.
But what followed that night was like a 2-year journey.
I would say that's 8 years ago.
It was
That
like
was
a
right
2 or
after
3
we
year
left.
journey from that night.
Yeah.
Because that night we didn't know anybody in this room. Like, because yeah, Sharita, we didn't even know you at that point. And so from that night forward, it was all the little things. It was the people God was orchestrating to be here, or that we would encounter along the way. Because there's been a lot of people that have already gone off on their own journees, like from when that started. I was just sitting here thinking about all of them. But it was all the little things, I think, from that night. And again, I'm the skeptic of the group. Just thinking, we have nothing. Like, how are we gonna make this happen? Like the building. Like, we don't have any money. Like, where's that gonna come from? Like, and it does, and it has. I remember the night before the first service on C Street, we were there to like 1 o'clock in the morning, finishing up.
And that was different from any other night?
No, but that was the night I remember. We were finishing painting and like just setting things up and getting ready, and hopefully that's a picture we'll see next week. But just thinking, man, is anybody going to show up? Like, is anybody actually going to be here tomorrow? And yeah, it was pretty full.
So let me tell a story from that first service. Not the Sunday service, but when we first started, we did a Sunday service in the morning. Monty's on the loose. Oh, are you okay, Lynn?
Lynn down.
So we did a Sunday morning service, and then we would do a Tuesday night service on C Street. And our very first Tuesday night service, if you were ever at Old C Street, it was like this one big room, kind of like this. And at the time, we had pews set up in it. And I'm up front preaching, and in the back, we had a set of couches. And from the couches, I hear the sound that every human knows so well that is only one thing. And I'm like, people are vomiting. And so like, cool. okay, I'm just going to keep preaching. And so like I'm preaching, people are puking. I hear Bob go and like walk right beside me.
Because the bathrooms are behind you had to go back there.
So he goes like what would be like through the door to the stairs here. And so he like goes behind me to get a mop bucket. So then I'm still preaching, and he's like, eat, like wheeling the mop bucket. And Bob was like the security guy, and like the cleanup guy, and the coffee maker guy, and like all the things. So like we get through this service, and it was just like mass chaos, and we get done, and everyone leaves, and it was just the four of us, and I think a couple of other people. Maddie, I think you were there that night. And Bobby, there was just a handful of us, like maybe 5 or 6 of us. And I said, I want everybody to come here for a minute. And we stood in the back right by the couches. And I said, I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to take a deep breath.
Yeah.
And I said, I want you to name what you smell. And I remember vividly, Maddie, do you remember this? I remember like the answers were things like vomit, urine, pine sol, coffee, body odor. There was just this smell in that building you couldn't get out no matter how much you cleaned it because it had been an old bar that had been shut up. Like, so that was just like
Rough.
Stale building smell. You had a little bit of marijuana. You had food. Like there was just all these smells. And I was like, I want you to remember this smell because I think if church could be a candle, this is what it's supposed to smell like. It's not supposed to smell like apple cinnamon air freshener, right? It's not supposed to smell like fancy incense. It's supposed to feel like life and community and being in the places where people are and building family and building relationships. And so we've always joked there's like now a company that will make your candle smell. And I'm like, maybe we really could make a TCG smelling candle. But I remember that night very well. So, okay, so here's my next question for you. How has this journey changed your prayer life? I'm gonna start with you.
I guess that's hard, right? I went from a non-existent prayer life to a very Bible rigid prayer life. You know, my beautiful wife, bringing me, and I got indoctrinated into the Southern Baptist Church, and
That's a fair term.
I think then it was just like say the words, say the prayer, say the words. You're free to have some conversation. I think now my prayer life is just more of a continual conversation. There's days that I may forget to say things to them, and I don't get any ill things because I don't, but most of the time my conversations are just continual. Like if I'm just driving, I don't necessarily say amen. I'm just driving, and when something comes, I thank them for something. I ask for help when I need help, but it's just a continual conversation. And I think it's just that my prayer life, has just become so much more personal, right? Because it is just an open conversation, right? I have the right, and they don't necessarily like it probably if I get upset and say things that I'm not supposed to say to them, but
What?
yeah, they know that you're upset already, right? And so knowing that I can have whatever conversation that I feel I need to have, and so if I'm driving along and something's going on and I feel a certain way, I know I can have that open conversation because my prayer life allows that now, where it used to be, even when I was young, it was like on your hands and knees with your hands crossed praying, to, well, you got to say these certain prayers to get to where you are. And now it's just has changed my prayer life to give me much more of a personal relationship that I can have those conversations. And I think that's changed how I look at life so much because I can have those open conversations.
Yeah. How about you?
I would say, hi, I'm Holly. I'm on TCG staff, and I don't really pray. I hope that is like healing for somebody out there. I think I walked in to TCG coming from this influence of the worship culture that was like, and for me as a music person, like worship was prayer for me. I came in with this very just like belief in praying daily, praying often, praying all the things, all the ways. And I think doing this together, the entire journey of TCG over the last 5 years, it has completely rocked my faith. And doing the journey of TCG in the city and fighting oppression and fighting social justice issues, like, it has pulled every piece of my faith apart. And I think where I am today, I do not know what that sound is. I think it's Monty.
I think it's Monty.
Like, we need to send Coco some, like, energy vibes. But I think what has been shaped has been this experience where, to me, worship and prayer is sitting in our family connection building and loving on a family and seeing breakthroughs and seeing bonding and attachment and healing. It's going out on street outreach, even though I hate the freaking cold, and like wading through the snow just to like call someone by name and do the bare minimum of what we can to remind them that they're valuable and they're loved, and then going to leave and then they want to give me something back. Like, it's sitting in these spaces and it's listening to stories and just getting to give something, anything of hope and value and love to a person. Like, it's being outside in nature and like having this very complicated relationship of like, the seasons are beautiful and they can also be so exhausting to someone who has to survive in the elements, and like, how the F are we here right now, like in our city, but we're gonna keep doing this together. And so I think for me, prayer and worship has changed so much. But while it's ripped so many pieces of my faith away, it is giving me this insane confidence that like, we're not alone in this work, and that this work matters, and that every person on this planet matters, and that just showing up completely unqualified, completely not knowing what we're gonna do or say, completely like having this personality that we maybe assume isn't in the right fit for whatever this line of work is, like, it matters and it has value. And so I think for me now, it's this place of like, I'm not necessarily know how I'm praying right now, but I just have this insane confidence that's like, okay, that's gonna be okay. Like, I know that this is continued to grow, and I know that we're gonna continue to meet more incredible people, and it's just this, we're not doing this alone, so.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's been, I mean, again, the rigid, you're supposed to get up and read your Bible and then pray, and then before you go to bed, you pray again, and after every meal, and in before every meal. What do you say?
Sorry, because I'm laughing and I feel like I need to explain that because I'm not laughing at my husband. Because we don't pray a lot with our children. Hudson has developed a very beautiful prayer life at the moment. So my in-laws pray at the table, and it's a tradition, and so they all hold hands and they pray, and so that's what we do when we go over to their house for dinner. So Hudson has picked up his prayer life is that he likes to hold hands with everybody. He closes his eyes and he goes, "I love Christy."
Don't we all?
I feel like there's a theological lesson in there somewhere.
He
How
just
can I
like
top that now?
randomly does it too. He'll be like, "You want to pay? I love Christy," and I was like, "What? What is happening?" It's very sweet and weird. You will be leaving your ordination.
Anyway, I don't know if I can keep going. For me, it's just been like, I think along the same lines with Bob of just this freedom, and it doesn't have to be your prayer life doesn't have to be structured like around the certain times, and it doesn't have to be certain words. It like me and God over the last 5 years have had certain words, and that's okay. And like we've had some pretty intense conversations in the car rides between home and work that like this isn't okay. And prior to this, that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
You know, it would have, for me, it would have just been bottle it up and move on.
Yeah. Okay, so I have 2 more questions. So this one may be kind of hard. I'm warning you ahead of time.
Thank you.
So I want you to look around this room right now. I know that there are lots of people that we love that aren't here tonight.
No.
But the people that are here tonight, I want you to look around this room and I want you to, is there a story that is represented in this room that has challenged you, has challenged your faith, has challenged your view of God or scripture living itself out in the world? Because I know that we all have been really blessed to have a front row seat in all of these lives, and I count that as the greatest privilege of my life. But there's a lot of really beautiful stories in this room, and do you want to go first?
I pass.
No, you can't pass. I think you have 2 in this room.
God, I think most of the guys in this room, some of the ladies, people in general have shared a lot of life things. There's a few. I don't even know how to recap. You know, yeah, it's been a journey. You know, I remember, God, I don't even know where to start. Been a lot. Walked out, you know. I think me and Dave, me and Jeff have probably been a lot of walks here, a lot of miles. Dave, you know, we half-heartedly for years talked about coming to work for me, and you know, I'll never forget, we're at the OC and shows up and he says, "I'm ready." I'm like, "What are you ready for? What are you even talking about?" He's like, "I'm ready to make the change." He said, "I'm ready to come to work." And you know, that was, you know, that was a pretty amazing walk that Dave let me be part of his life. I'm sorry. They're just hard stories to walk out. Just very hard stories to walk out. And that's only a little bit of it. I can't get into details. You know, I love Dave. Then there's Jeff. Countless nights of late phone calls, early mornings. Friendship that grew. Probably one that most people would never thought would have grew, but a lot of long conversations, a lot of dark nights, some dark days, and it's just, you guys have changed how I look at life. You guys will never know how much you guys sorry. Sorry. You guys have done as much for me as you guys feel that I have done for you. It has changed how I look at the world. It changed even how I feel in seeing people can change, you know, and I think that has made so many things different, you know. The way I've interacted with Marcus and Mike and everybody, so much of that is molded from the experiences that I've walked out with you guys, you know. It just, to see the differences that can be made in those times is just, it opened my eyes up to people really can change, right? You know, for a long time in my life, I just would have thought that people can't change, and people are who they are, you know. And when you get to do life with so many amazing people, then you realize that that's not the truth. People can change, circumstances can change. You know, we are not defined by all the shitty stuff that we did, because, you know, we've all done it. We have a future to live, and we can mold our own destiny, right? And so going forward, you know, I'm proud to have you all in my life and call you all family. I truly am. And I'm thankful for any part that you would let me be of your guys' life. Sorry.
Go.
I have two, if that's okay. Is that okay? I want to start with just acknowledging that when we said yes to this, and we started building TCG, when we said we started as families, it literally started as families. And so Ellie was a baby at the time TCG launched. Lynn was baby barely in your double digits. Hudson was born and came to C Street a few days after birth to say hi to everybody. In fact, I remember Paul soaking himself in hand sanitizer just so he could hold Hudson for the first time. But I just want to acknowledge, because part of this has been ever since day one, actually you know when you read a book and there's like these Roman numerals, like since those days, it's been a lot of late nights, it's been a lot of long hours, and our kids have been there for every part of it. And so I want to shout out Lynn, because Lynn started babysitting because we were doing C Street demos, and first of all, they were allergic to everything in that building. And second of all, Ellie was a baby, and it would get really late, and we couldn't stop. And so they would bravely go hang out at my house and call us every 10 minutes to make sure that they were doing things right. And so I've watched them grow from being just the babysitter of Ellie to being this insane, fierce advocate who goes upstairs and teaches our kids sign language and teaches them about being affirming and social justice issues and being anti-racist, to the point that my kindergartner goes to kindergartner and teach everybody sign and ask them their pronouns and stands up for injustice on the playground. And whenever we go on outreach with them, Lynn brings an entire amount of pet supplies to make sure that the pets have equal support and love on the streets as much as the people do. And I think that's been really beautiful to see them grow up in this space, to see your boys grow up in this space in Montana. And then to get to bring raise our kids in this space. And so, we don't pass somebody in the car without Ellie wanting to make sure that that person's okay and asking what we have in our card, if we have hot hands, or if we have bus passes, or if we have a car kit, and educating people. So I'm really proud of that space, and I'm really proud of them because they are growing up in a very beautiful, interesting, crazy world. And so I just want to shout out them and how inspiring they are to me to keep doing this, and how forgiving and supportive they are when things are rough. The other person I want to shout out is Coco. Hi.
Oh!
I love you. There's a lot of times inside a family connection when things get really, really hard. And I think about you, and it reminds me to never give up showing up for someone, because I'm really proud of the mom that you are. And I'm really proud of all of the... And I'm really proud of you because you've been through a lot of shit, but you never give up. I love you.
Coco and I used to hang out in a closet together at Commercial Street, so man, we go way back.
I do remember those days.
I know. I had to put Coco in a closet a couple of times out of great love and protection. How about you, Scott?
For me, I came into this very naive. Very naive. Let's just say that. We'll leave it there. And some of y'all's freaked me out. I'm not gonna lie, you freaked me out. But
Scott spooked easily at the beginning.
I got better. But especially the days on C Street, I was like, "Woof, what have we got ourselves into?" That it was either break out of the shell, or I don't know what was going to happen. But it's been a pleasure and an honor to get to know you all, to hear your conversation. I think one of the best times was on C Street after Sunday service. Was gatherers would come in and bring lunch, and just getting to sit and talk and eat together, and that's where this came from, really. And then when it would get really cold, hang out all day. And so getting to know you all then, and just you all helped shape me at this point. Like your stories, your life stories, your experiences, and so super honored to know you all.
Man, that was like an Enneagram 9 kind of answer. You're not even a 9. So I think that there are a lot of stories that I could tell all night long, but obviously I'm not going to do that. I think there's just a couple that I want to speak to just as an example of some lessons for all of us. One of those is Sharita. Sharita and I have known each other for many years, and is one of my favorite humans on this planet. And I think one of the things that I want people to always remember is the power of questions and the power of curiosity. I think so much of where we are today is because of Sharita's questions. And you push us all to be better, and you push us all in ways that not a lot of people get to see. And I don't think that everyone always knows some of those roles. And if you don't have people in your life that will ask you hard questions and will tell you to take care of yourself and will speak truth to you, you need those people in your life, because those people make you better and they shape you and they sharpen you. And sometimes they are in the spotlight and sometimes they are in the shadows. And Sharita's in a spotlight in a lot of places in this city, and she often chooses to take more of a shadow role here at TCG. But I think behind every good thing is people who play a huge, huge role to encourage you, to support you. And you have been that for the four of us, and we are so grateful for you. That's how everybody feels, Sharita.
Scott's usually over here being like, thank you.
And so I would ask questions, and Bob sometimes would be like, yeah, I get Sharita's point, but Christy is always like, let's go, go, go. And I ask those questions, and then Bob would show up, and I'm like, oh my God, I feel like such an appeal for not trusting and believing, because God always came through, and it improved my faith. You know, I came in as a believer, but my faith exploded because I saw how genuinely you walk in this faith. This is what God wants us to do. I didn't have anything, but I saw a word.
Let's say, Jack, you're one of my people I'm going to pick on too, because I think sometimes we all feel like we're not qualified, we're not capable, we're not trained, we don't know how to help. And I have appreciated watching you, Jack, say, you know, I may not have a theology degree, I may not have these things, but like I can cook and I'm good at that, and I love to do that. And like you have brought all that you have and all that you are to the table, and you have tried to find ways to not just make a difference, but to save lives and to build relationship. And I love watching the way that when I see you and you're naming people, and I saw this person and this person, like the relational way that you love out loud has been a real blessing to watch. And it is a great reminder for all of us that we all have talents, we all have gifts, we all have passions, and we can all help make a difference. And I'm Yep. 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 So instead of comparing yourself with what you can't do, find what you can do. And that's true for all of us, no matter what, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Good days.
Yeah. I also just want to acknowledge 3 people who are all sitting at the same table, 4 really, that I will always be in the front row of your cheering sections. I am so proud of all of you. I'm proud of all of you in this room. But Mike and Marcus, Dave and Delana, and Jeff, too. Man, watching you guys grow these last few years, watching you make hard choices. Sammy, you're in that group too. Watching you have to wrestle with consequences. Watching you be accountable. Watching you not only grow individually, but also watching you become leaders, and watching you give back and turn around, and watching the way that you pour into Michael Graham and TJ and Arnessa and Michelle and everybody else that comes into our world, and the way that you just step up and pass along wisdom and love and grace and compassion. That has been one of the most beautiful things for me to get to watch, is for you all to become leaders, and for you all to become the people that are genuinely making the day-to-day happen. And I trust you with every piece of everything, and I have full confidence in your abilities, and that's a really, really beautiful thing, because I think one of the big things for us from day one was that family atmosphere, but was also the idea that, like, we can't do this by ourselves. And I think TCG has taught me the power of community, the power of believing in people, and the power of giving people the space to do what they can do. And, I think about that story you told about C Street and needing to expand family connection. You guys don't know this, but here's how that happened. So we're at a visit on C Street. Holly has 5 families that night. I was helping to supervise. I think there were 6 or 7 of us supervising that night. And it was rainy, and it was icy, and it was cold. And we had to turn away so many people at the door because we had kids in here that night. But the lights were on, and people knew if the lights were on at TCG on Commercial Street, you could come and you could get warm and get, coffee or whatever. And so my job that night was to supervise the visit and to repetitively give people coffee and hand warmers, gloves, and I love you, I'm sorry, but you can't come inside. And after about the 13th or 14th of that, I couldn't handle it anymore. And I snapped a picture of my feet, looking out into the room. You couldn't see any of the kids, but the pews and my feet, and you could see the door behind me. And it was kind of let me explain to you what's happening in my life tonight. I'm straddling this responsibility of making a safe space for families to work towards reunification, but at the same time, so many people that I love are stuck outside and can't come inside to get warm. And there's an empty bay next to us that we need to be able to rent, and we need to be able to renovate, and I need to do it tomorrow. And we had already called our landlord to ask how much it would take to put down a deposit and get that building. And then we'd already figured out what it would cost to renovate it. And so we knew to the penny that we needed $6,000 to be able to get that building. And I put it out on Facebook, and we had it in 24 hours. What are you doing?
Unplugging.
Oh, he's gonna plug stuff in.
No, he unplugged it. Hit.
Oh.
Speaker.
But we had those resources in 24 hours, and we signed a lease the very next day. And that's the power that exists in this city of community. I know we all have a lot of frustrations with our city, and I have them too. But when we truly can articulate a need and we can call people to action, there's still good stuff in this city, and I believe we can still make a huge difference.
Monty's agreeing with me.
He is agreeing with me. I think so. All right. Any last thoughts?
I'll just go, and I know so many of you here, right? You are on staff or volunteer or whatnot to help us out.
Or we're a part of.
Or we're part or are part of things TCG. And you don't understand, and I don't know if you could ever understand how much we appreciate that. Holly talks back to the TCG days, when we talking first time we did cold weather stuff, right? Come January and February, you guys not may understand, there was 4 of us that manned the building, and Holly cooked dinner, and she couldn't cook.
We love you. You learned.
You
in
learned
that
very well.
CCLI.
She was a great cook by the time the end of this voyage came around, because there literally would be 4 or 5 of us that ended that shift every single night that it was cold. So to look out here and see so many amazing faces that have come alongside of us to walk out this life with us, it is just amazing. Because let me tell you what, I don't know if we'd still be here, because I'd probably be dead if we would have kept going the way we were.
That's fair.
But it was things. So I say thank you to everybody that has stepped up to take part of that, so that we can continue to grow and do all the amazing things that God has called this ministry to do. Because I ain't gonna say it's not our ministry. This is everybody's ministry.
Yeah.
And God calls us to move forward, and I truly believe that. Oh, one more thing. I see Lynn finally come back in. I was gonna say it earlier. Holly was talking about the faith as the kids earlier, and growing up and doing this, and how Ellie, sees people and wants to help them. I'll never forget, I don't even know how many years ago it was. It was Lynn's birthday, and Lynn got money for their birthday, and we drove around Springfield to find the one lady that they seen sitting on the side of the road asking for help. Mm-hmm. And we drove around for an hour so that we could find this lady, so that Lynn could give that lady all the money that she got for her birthday. Yeah. That's how life is supposed to be done. That is how we should do things. I'm not saying give away everything you own, but to have that heart that you're willing to go out of your way to do something to take care of somebody. If everybody here, everybody in Springfield would do that, we would have a whole lot less problems. Take a little effort.
You have any last thoughts?
I just want to, I know next week we're going to celebrate Christy for her ordination and getting to become a reverend. But I also just want to pause and just say thank you for 5 years of leadership and vision and outreach and late nights and early mornings and sometimes nights with no sleep, and pushing us all to do better and loving us all in the process. I'm really grateful for your leadership, and I'm really grateful for your friendship. And
same.
I might also just want to say I'm really damn proud of us.
We survived.
Now I will tell you, funny.
Oh, Lord.
No, because it's not bad. But, back in the days, it was probably around this time when we were sitting here discussing life. And Christy used to tell me, I really want to be part of a church plant. I really want to go and do this. I want to be an associate pastor. I want to help. I want to help to lead. And the whole time in my mind, I'm like, I don't even know who you're looking at in the mirror, because there's no way that we're going into a church plant and you're going to be an associate pastor. I'm just like, I know you. We've been doing life for a long time. Yeah, I'm like, you're not doing this. But she did try to play it down for a long time. She's like, yeah, I just need to find a church that we can help plant, and I'll go and I'll be the assistant and we'll make this work. I'm like, there's no way that's happening. That was as crazy as thinking that I'd have anything to do with church back in the day.
Yeah. So we're going to end tonight. We're going to end with a song that I want to introduce to you all. This is going to become one that you'll probably hear at TCG a lot. It's been on our background music during dinner for the last couple of weeks, so you may recognize it. But when we sat this night and we talked and we dreamed about what church could look like, I distinctly remember one thing. And one of the things I remember is us talking about doing life together. And I remember us talking about being around tables together. And that has always been a central theme to TCG, is to gather around tables, to share meals, to share life, to cry with people, to celebrate with people, to clean up puke, to go out on outreach, to drive around, for hours and hours looking for people that we're terrified and worried about. That has been the embodiment of doing life together. And we found this song a while ago. It's called Crowded Table. And our tables here may not always be crowded, but I feel like our collective table is very crowded, that we have had so many people that have come across our life. And it has been a blessing to be a part of all of them. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to listen. We found a lyric video for this song, so you can actually read the lyrics, listen to this. Next week, we're going to listen to the same song, and it's going to be set with 5 years of memories, of pictures. But I wanted to introduce the song to you tonight because the words, I think, are just really, really meaningful. And to me, they kind of signify what we hope to carry, not just from what we've started, but what we believe is to come in the future, and that it is going to be full of crowded tables that we are all called to set, not just in this space on Saturday night, but in our homes, in our lives, in the places that we show up, that we are all called to gather people and love on people. So I want you to listen to this, and then we're going to call it a night.
You can hold my hand when you need to let go. I can be a mountain when you're feeling valley low. I can be a street light showing you the way home. 'Cause you can hold my hand when you need to let go. Want a house with a crowded table and a place by the fire for everyone. Let us take on the world while we're young and able, and bring this back together when the day is done. If we want to guard it, we're gonna have to sow the seed. Plant a little happiness, let the roots run deep. If it's love that we give, then it's love that we reap. If we want to guard it, we're gonna have to sow the seed. Yeah, I want a house with a crowded table and a place by the fire for everyone. Let us take on the world while we're young and able, and bring this back together when the day is done. The door is always open, your picture's on my wall. Everyone's a little broken, and everyone belongs. Yeah, everyone belongs. I want a house with a crowded table and a place by the fire for everyone. Let us take on the world while we're young and able, and bring this back together when the day is done. And bring this back together when the day is done.
That is my heart for this church. That is my heart for each of us, that we all do life in a way that lets us have crowded tables, that we invite people into our world, that we do life together, that it's okay to be broken and messy in those spaces, and that we show up for each other in the good things, in the bad things, and all the things in between. That has been so much of the journey so far, and it will continue to be the journey. But that is my call and my challenge for each of us, is to find ways to live that out, not just in this space, but in your life every day. So I am excited to celebrate with you all this week. It's going to be a fun week. There's a list of all the stuff that's going on next Saturday, so it's going to be a full week. So make sure you kind of take a picture of that on your phone or whatever, so you know all the things to do and when to be where next week on Saturday. But it's going to be a really good day, and I'm so excited that you're all a part of it. I love you.
Middle of the night, running scared, we were so alone. But we were grateful for the little that we had.